r/AskReddit. What's the scariest encounter you've had with a total stranger? I was once driving in the country and it was pouring rain in the dead of night. So hard that I was driving very slowly and couldn't see any of the signs, before GPS. I mean, I had never been in rain this heavy. I had to pull over to the side of the road to try and see the sign to see if I was going in the right direction. I didn't get out due to the rain, so was craning my neck forward to try and make out where I was, when suddenly the passenger door opened and a man got inside the car, sat down and looked at me. Here is South Africa, there is a fair amount of violent crime and hijackings, so I instinctively started panicking and yelling and screaming at the top of my lungs, flailing my arms to try and do something, anything to stop this guy from attacking me. He started screaming as well in terror and jumped out the car. I quickly leaned over and closed the passenger door and sped off down the road. I was breathing so heavily at this point and trying my best to calm down, nearly in tears. I kept replaying it in my head the whole time, and suddenly remember that the man smiled at me. It suddenly dawned on me that it was probably a hitchhiker that I hadn't seen, who thought that I was pulling over to give him a lift. Only to be greeted by me screaming and trying to hit him. Was probably his scariest encounter with a stranger as well. It's a mix of the scariest, and the best. I was 11, and at the park with my cousin who was 3. My cousin, being a stubborn 3-year-old, told me to leave him be, and I sat out on the bench. I was just reading my book, and occasionally looking up, until this like 50-something-year-old man sat down next to me, and just started talking. He asked me, which kid was mine, like 4 times, even after I made it quite clear I was uncomfortable, and then he gets all close to me, and was like, "Do you want another one?" So I started freaking out, until this homeless man, who I later knew to be Marty, pulled me off the bench, and told him that he was lucky he didn't pop his jaw, and told me to go home. I'm glad Marty showed up, because I don't know what I would have done. I will never forget it. When Ghostbusters 2 came out, I wanted to see it. My mom took me to the local theater. I think I was around 9. I needed to use the bathroom, so I ran down the small hall and turned the corner. When I saw a much older man come out of the bathroom. When he saw me, he stopped, went back in. When I didn't move, he opened the door, peeking his head and arm out, motioning me to come towards him. I probably looked like a deer in headlights. I didn't move. It was frozen until he said, come on in." Panic rushed over me and I ran back towards my mom, who said I was pale white. She quickly left the theater with me and went home. Stranger danger worked out that day in the 80s. I can still picture him, or at least the picture my brain made of this memory. Edit. Sorry I can't get to everyone's questions, but I truly thank you for sharing your stories. I had no idea how common this was for little kids. I am so glad most, if not all of you, ran back to safety. It saddens me for the kids that didn't have that instinct. No kid deserves to be scared or coerced by another adult, regardless of intentions. In the 80s, kids were left alone more. We were left at amusement park as teens, kids at mall arcades. It is just how it was. Without the internet, you never knew what was outside the general area of coverage unless it was extreme and made it to national news. Today we know what could be lurking behind open doors, vans, and corners, but that doesn't make it any better. It's still scary, and I am glad more kids are watched more closely, not left alone, etc. Be safe, and please, after reading all these comments, teach your kids stranger danger and drill it in their heads. Edit 2, thank you for all of the awards and all the stories. Although, hearing all these stories reminds me that it can be very scary out there. Keep safe and healthy, everyone. Thank you, everyone. I was about 19 and driving home from dinner one night, probably a ribeye sandwich from the local truck stop, because those were cheap and excellent. A woman standing next to a motorcycle at the side of the road waved me down, so I stopped. She said that she'd run out of gas, and that she didn't want to scare me, but her boyfriend was hiding down over the bank. Uh-oh. This giant comes up over the bank in dusty road leathers. He's a damn mountain of denim, leather, and hair. Shit. Fake damsel in distress, I'm an idiot. I was so close to home I felt safe. Maybe I can leg it home. Surely he's too big to be fast. The giant apologizes for hiding, but we ran out of gas, and there was no way anyone was going to stop on an empty road to help with me standing here. He's embarrassed. Now I felt a little guilty for agreeing with him. He's intimidating as hell without putting any effort into it. He doesn't have to. We're out of sight and isolated on a secondary road, but it's less than a mile to I-80. I can almost see my house from where I'm standing. It gets boring from there. I tell him I've got a can of gas for the lawnmower with at least a gallon left in it. He says he can go 70 miles on that. The truck stop is 2-3 miles up the interstate, and is happy to pay for it. I'm home and back in 2 minutes. He insists on paying me $10 for a $2 gallon of gas because I'm not sure I'd have come back if I were you. There was just that 15 seconds of ice cold, slow motion terror between the girlfriend saying she didn't want to scare me, who says that? And the mountain coming up over that bank and apologizing. I was walking home from the bus stop after school. About 15 years old. It was really not far, but there were construction workers drinking on the side of the road. One of them got up and followed me home calling suggestive things. I honestly can't remember what, but his intentions were clear. This was about 200 meters from home, so I sprint home. We have an automatic gate, so I realize he will catch me if I wait for it to open, or he'll follow me in. So I climb over, which is normally not easy, but that day I flew over. I was really shaken up. For me, this story is actually about what happened next. Which is that I called my mom, who had an intense job. She dropped everything at work, came home immediately, made me hot chocolate and pancakes. We had a long conversation where she validated my feelings and fear. She's the best. Went to a yard sale with my aunt when I was like 5. A little boy, about the same age as me, approaches me and tells me to come inside to meet his dad. I wander off with him without my aunt noticing, and he brings me into the house where the yard sale is taking place. We go down to the basement, and there was his naked dad, lying on a couch excitedly greeting me as if he'd been awaiting my company or something. I actually don't remember much after that. I just got out of there as fast as possible, and it's been a strange memory of mine ever since. Walking to my friend's house the last day of 8th grade. Old lady pulled her car next to me, almost cutting off my walking path. I backed away because WTF? She called out to me that she liked my hair. Then she said that her hair used to be my color until she got raped. You'd better believe my little chunky butt ran to my friend's house and told her parents. I was at a storage depot with my ex, picking up some stuff or other. Suddenly and without warning, this oldish guy approaches out of nowhere and starts a conversation with my ex. I'm in the unit at the time, so it's possible he didn't know I was there, but the clipped tone and monosyllabic answers from my ex were enough for me to know he was making her feel uncomfortable. That's when I heard him say, "Don't worry, I'm not going to rape you or anything." Like, literally 2 or 3 sentences into a conversation with a total stranger, he felt this would be a reassurance. So I stepped out of the unit, making my presence known by moving some stuff around in the hall, and his whole demeanor changed, somewhere between contrition and aggression, that I dared insert myself into whatever the fuck he thought this was. My ex stayed back while I kept the old bastard's attention on me, and he took me to task for calling him mate, a common thing British people do when they don't know someone's name, saying it was rude and disrespectful to a stranger. I responded with as rude and disrespectful as talking about rape to a young woman you thought was alone. He shuffled away, mumbling something about knowing the management, leaving us both a little shook. To this day, I have no idea what his damage was, but it was clear that he wasn't used to being confronted like that. God knows what he would have done if my ex had been alone. A very cheerful guy approached me and my friend in a park, in a very non-threatening way. He was holding a frisbee and explained he was putting together an impromptu game of ultimate frisbee and looking for people to join him. Which was fine, but then he tried to grab me by the throat. It was such a sudden change of mood. My friend, an athletic dude, fortunately, got between us and just stared him down and he ran away. The whole thing was just bizarre. Back when I was 16 working at Lowe's, some customer who was an old man walked up behind me without me even noticing and whispered in my ear, "Do you know where I can find the hoses at?" He said that so close to my ear where I could feel his warm breath while he was caressing my shoulder. My body froze up and all I could say was, "I think they're in aisle 5 whelp." Shortly after I found out that he never even went to that end of the store where they were. LOL. I had just left my apartment to go for a walk down towards the beach at night when it was pitch black. There was a park along the way. Some guy came up to me asking to use my phone. I apologized and lied and said I didn't have one. He didn't believe me and started to get aggressive. He asked me where I lived and if I had a boyfriend. He started following me and that's when I started to run and went back to my place. I didn't feel comfortable going where I wanted to. I was in high school and worked at a truck stop. One night a trucker came in and stared at me for a long time. Wherever I moved to he was staring me down. I told him that if he needed anything that he would need to come to the counter and order it. He just grunted and kept staring. I'm not a small person and at that time I was in football, wrestling, and track. I was also at the gym 6 days a week. I was 190 pounds of muscle and teenager hormones. But the vibes I was getting from this guy were making me nervous. I called up my other co-worker and told them I was going to be in the freezer for a while. So I was stocking the freezers and coolers for a while and then went to the bathroom. As I entered the bathroom the trucker jumped up and walked in behind me and just stood in there while I took a piss and washed my hands. As soon as I got out I grabbed the trash bags and beelined outside to take care of the trash at the pumps until he left. My co-worker asked me why the trucker kept following me after I finally came in. I had no idea why. He never said anything. Didn't order anything. Just filled up his semi and creeped on me. I've never been as creeped out by a person as I was with that guy. Edit. Thanks for the awards, kind strangers. I was taking a shower in the bathroom of the walkout basement. My 3-year-old son was upstairs with my mother eating breakfast. I heard him open the door and told him, "Mommy is in the shower, you have to wait." The door didn't close but he didn't respond either, so I asked him to go back upstairs and ask Grandma for whatever he needed. Instead I see a shadow and outline of a hand touching the shower curtain and realize that there is an adult in the bathroom, not my son. I scream and punch through the shower curtain. I don't think I connected, but I heard the man run out anyway. As fast as I could I jumped out and grabbed a towel to check on my son and mom. At the same time my mom was coming downstairs to see if I was okay from the scream. The man never went upstairs and they didn't even know it had happened. The walkout basement door and window were open. I called the police and they didn't find him, just my empty wallet about a block away. They did come back to me a few weeks later to let me know that they caught a guy in the area raping women at gunpoint and they think it was the same guy. Never been so scared in my life. Add. The most visceral part for me was knowing he was just standing quietly in the bathroom while I talked to him like he was my son. Honestly, I don't know why, but that creeps me out the most. It felt really violating at the time. About 10 years ago at my sister's wedding, this older, very Italian guy, think of a mob guy, who I've never even seen before, comes up to me. He says, "Do you remember me a couple of years ago from the fair?" I said no. I honestly didn't at all. He says, "It's probably better that you don't," and then laughed and walked away. I was just standing there so confused. I still have no idea what that was about. I, 21F at the time, was in a store picking up some items for my house when I noticed a man was literally peeking at me from around a corner. I first brushed it off and continued my shopping, but was aware that this man was following me around the store. He then sang out to me and said I looked familiar and asked if I went to the local university. I didn't, so I said no. At this point I got creeped out, so I checked out and went to my car. I heard footsteps behind me and knew he had followed me, so I just jumped in my car and locked the doors. It was dark, so I hadn't noticed him go around the back of my car until he banged on my passenger window. I ignored him and started the car. This prompted him to run around the front and start banging on my driver's side door, trying to open it and asking me for a ride. I was terrified and just pulled out of the parking space as fast as I could and drove off, with him chasing my car until I rounded a corner. I have no idea what his plan was, but to this day I am nervous about dark parking lots at night. When I was around 10 to 11, a friend invited me to a water park. During swimming at a wave pool, he found some random kid around our age and decided to tell this kid that the game we were going to play was hold me down in the water. I didn't get that memo, so I thought him and this kid were just trying to drown me. This went on for what felt like an hour of me swimming away and hiding. I didn't hang out with him afterward. Same trip. After we were done with the pool, I got to the changing rooms and there is a couple people in there. Old man on the bench asks me if I wanted him to help me change. I just said no thanks and quickly changed and ran out. Pedo down the street tried to lure my sister and I to his house while we were walking down the street. We started ignoring him. On the way back, he threatened us and we went to my landlord's house to call the police. Guy got arrested shortly after but was bailed out. His dad was a sex offender and there had already been multiple complaints about him from other parents. Glad my sister and I were smart enough not to engage with him and to get help right away. Not scary per se, but deeply disturbing. Random dude at my local library accosted me while I was enjoying a new sci-fi novel and was absolutely convinced I was his son. Kept telling me he was sorry and he never meant to kill my mother, who he called Pink, and said some other heinous shit I won't describe. Batshit crazy, but he sounded so rational and calm the whole time. Shit gave me the creeps for a long time after. I'm late to the party here, but I was once threatened by a man with a scoped rifle while walking my dog. I was out in a field behind my apartment building at night, and I heard a voice from behind me say, "You better run fast, boy." I turned and saw a backlight silhouette of a man on a balcony with a scoped rifle, and I heard him close the bolt. I decided that running would only add tension to the situation, so I yanked on my dog's leash while calmly yet quickly walking towards the closest cover I could find. I immediately called 911, and when it was all said and done, the guy with the rifle claimed he was just showing the rifle to his friend. BS, but I couldn't prove otherwise. 14 years old, walking home, it was dark. Man gets off the bus, opens up his coat and says, "Like what you see." He was in his 40s. Completely naked. I've never run so fast in my life. When I was about 6, I was with my family at an incredibly crowded street festival we'd go to every year. I remember we had stopped to watch a band play for a minute or two, and then my mom, I assumed, took my hand and we continued walking. After a few seconds I realized the hand I was holding was puffy and hot, and my mom's hands were always cool and more slender, so I knew it wasn't her hand I was holding. I looked up to see a woman with long blonde hair and sunglasses grinning down at me. I said, "You're not my mom," and she just laughed and said, "That's okay, you can come with me anyway." Obviously my mom and dad had realized I was not with them at this point and were freaking out. My dad just happened to look in the exact right direction at the right time and saw this lady leading me away through a break in the crowd. He ran over to us, grabbed her shoulder, and she dropped my hand and disappeared in the crowd. I still can't believe he spotted us. It was like shoulder to shoulder people at this thing. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then you should like and subscribe.